Good morning and welcome back. It's early morning with Explicit, and today I am going to give you my yearly opinion of the DJI Avata. I've been contemplating this video and wanting to do it for quite a while, but at the same time, I'm like, there's a ton of videos out there. Why the hell is anybody going to want to hear mine? And I'm going to tell you why. I convinced myself of doing it. And for the very reason that this drone, and I can actually use the word drone because it has GPS, all that fun stuff. This is not a quadcopter. All the other shit I fly is a quadcopter. The reason I'm doing this is because this particular machine was created exactly for what I do, what F and Chet does, what Ghosts of FPV does, and a few others. Like my main flight characteristics, style. I want to create a whole new category of flying called contemporary FPV, where you mix mechanical with emotion and make awesome. But that's a whole other video. We are slow flow people. For y'all that don't know what slow flow is, it's exactly what it sounds. Creating flow while flying slow. Creating lines through the trees, the canopies, playgrounds, whatever it is, and making it just look like one smooth motion, which is not easy to do. A lot of people cannot fly slow. It's a talent in its own. Flying fast and flipping and rolling through all kinds of crazy forestry is epic as F, but it's different. Slow flow takes its own mental fortitude to do, and that is something that I have fallen in love with doing, and I think I'm pretty damn good at it. Anyway, so you have your DJI Avata. Has a whole fuck ton of pros depending on where you're coming from. And the reason I'm giving you my opinion, like I said, is from where I come from. This is what it's designed for. For a freestyle pilot to get into this, they're going to look at this and find it stupid, and it doesn't have the oomph that it needs. It needs to be modded. You got to take this off and put bigger props. And this is a purpose-built machine, like a bus in a city that has a purpose to do. You don't go take it on a racetrack and try to race it. You're taking a wrong purpose-built thing and doing something else with it. Yes, it can go fast. Yes, it can flip and roll. But it's not designed to do that. Yeah, I do some mild acro with it and stuff like that, and it does a fantastic job. I wish it was a little more tunable, and that it would go in my cons version or category of this is the lack of real tuning, but we're not going to get into that. This thing is meant to cruise, get beautiful video, and I'm very, very happy with it. Anyway, let's get started. Blah, 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 blah. Fake intro, da, da, da. I have modified the living shit out of mine and spent a ridiculous amount of hours hand painting it to stand out and look different. That is me. It gives me that ability. And let's say I didn't like it, or I smashed it, crashed it, did scratch it, broke it. This canopy is completely replaceable. Very easy to do. I've done F and Chet's. I've had Shane take his apart. So, I mean, it's super, super easy to do. Stupid prop guards. These are coming off. I'm going to try to find some better ones. Different props. I don't know if you call that a pro or con. The factory props suck. And they have a good chance of exploding and breaking at the hub. So right off the rip, once I got these, I had 2 or 3 flights with it and then went right into the HQ props. I had another version of the 5 blades, which were fantastic, and I'm in the middle of trying these here. Get FPV, I believe. Anyway, alright, so what do we have here? So I got a little list over here so I don't miss and try to make this as complete, professional, and as informative, helpful. I really want this to be a deciding factor for some people. Big shout to Raider FPV. He did get one. He had some questions. He hit me up. I gave him all the knowledge and info that I could and how much I liked mine. And he ended up getting one. And he's very, very thankful for it. Excuse me. First, right off the rip, flight time. Got your kick-ass batteries. I do like the smart battery thing. The only thing that's a pain in the ass with these is that if you were to borrow somebody else's, you have to firmware. It has a firmware update from somebody else's battery so you can fly it, which is kind of a pain in the ass. Takes about 4 to 5 minutes. Just, and it takes time with the battery. But you can fly with somebody else's battery, and when they go back, they're going to have to do the same thing. After the latest update that this thing has, I had to do that to every single battery. Anyway, I am consistent right around 14 minutes, 30 seconds total. Give or take, let's just say a full minute. So 13 to 14 minutes I get every single time I fly. Obviously, you get a little less if you fly epically hard or full acro versus just really, really cruising slow. Then you'd get a little bit more. But 13 to 14 minutes every single time is where I'm at with that. And I'm happy. That's more than enough time. It gives me time to, especially if we're going to a place and I want particular shots, I can just kind of cruise around wherever the mind lets you go. And then I can go get particular shots, hit certain lines, practice it, do whatever. I have all the time within that battery to do that, which is really awesome. Gives me a little more flexibility for my editing, which I'm very happy with. Video quality. Very, very happy. It does have a darker profile. Since I've updated to the 10-bit color version, significantly more happy. I can, if it's in a darker spot, I can pull it back a little bit and get the profile that I want while editing. But it tends to have a little bit darker of a color profile with the shadows and the blacks. But it's fixable. You can go in and change the settings before you take off, or come in, land, and then before you take off again. Some settings. I'm not a big fan, honestly, with what I do and everyone in this motion blur obsession. I'm flying pretty slow, so it's tough to get motion blur. So I've kind of walked away from the manual settings. If it's a sunny day with enough brightness in the forest, because most of our flights are in the forest or bandos or whatever, if I need the ND filter, I'll put on an ND8, but I've been running auto, and then I changed my ISO max down pretty far, so when you switch from light to dark, it's not fluctuating. EV comp, depending on, again, which is still auto stuff, the sensitivity to light, based on the environment I'm in, I've messed around a little bit, and try not to touch it too much, because the whites get blown out. But it's a trick. It's a pain in the ass either way you do it. Like I said, flying in the woods, especially on a sunny day or even an overcast day, it makes it very, very tough for a lot of cameras, or GoPros even too, because you have that white blasting through the canopy or blue sky, brightness or sunshine, and then the darkness of the canopy, so that it pisses off every camera. So it's a kind of a pain in the ass fight all the time. But if you have found magical settings, please tell me. Please tell me what you do with what camera you have, and I'll see if I can adapt and try. But lately, it's just been auto, and if it's bright enough in the canopy, I'll throw the ND8 on. The ability to go up and go down with a camera, I'd call that a game changer in many aspects. If you can do it properly, or let's just say you stop and you're getting between shots, there's multiple reasons. Being able to go up is something that doesn't fly like this unless you're in acro, or you want to wiggle through tight spaces. You can raise it up and see up, and you can see down. And if you don't go 100% down, I use horizon lock. That's just the flow that I prefer. You don't see any of this. You do in your regular video, but it's cropped in, so you don't see the prop guards, and these are cut anyway. But you can roll down, and that's been some fun trying to get certain shots where you're actually decelling down and then tilting the camera up, or same thing, kind of come up and coming down. I try to get some traditional drone shots using this in between the FPV kind of flow that you get, and I'm very, very pleased with it. You can kind of just sit there hovering and do pans and stuff like that and turns, and it works well. Where are we now? SD card. I've talked about the SD card in this ridiculous, childish, overhyping, whiny baby bullshit that people put on the SD card on this thing. I can't do it right now because I am holding my phone and I don't feel like taking it back out. But you have an SD card slot here, which you can pull with one finger and then kind of pull it and then lift it back. Super easy to do. If you align the prop right, you can get in there, push it, and it will pop itself out. You can get it with a nail, or you can go through the prop with two fingers and pull it out. And I always just let it go onto the desk, pick it up. Getting it back in, all these crying babies like, it takes so long. So if you're like this and you have two hands, or even one, you kind of get it so it catches, pushes in, push it in, you're done. I don't understand what all the babiness is. When you make a compact product like this, you are going to run into places you have to put things that you probably wouldn't if you had the room, but it's not the end of the world. Ease of use, still functional. It doesn't stop me. I don't sit there and scream and yell trying to get the SD card out. I found that whole hype absolutely ridiculous. So that is not a big deal to me. Props. I already kind of touched on the props. I prefer to run aftermarket prop. I have my other ones saved. They would be backups if I need them, but I always carry extra props with these. So swap your props as quick as you can. There are plenty of mods for this. Hold on a second. I gotta get something. This is the next, I don't know what you want to call, batch of fun for all of us. We got 3 guys here with the avatas. This is not done and cleaned up yet. I decided to start my video. But this is going to sit over this backwards. And it screws down. I don't know if I can do this with one hand. Cue the circus music. So yeah, this will sit over that. I can't push it down yet because I don't have both hands. I don't want to scratch up my paint job. Anyway, it's to hold a GoPro, and I'm not going to put a GoPro on it. Not worth it. I have the the bones. I don't feel like chopping into this thing and wiring it in. Plus, it's going to raise its profile higher than I choose because I shoot through some tiny, tiny little places with this thing. And especially when I'm over water, I do not need to hit my head on it. But this is going to be a mount for, and I shout Ghost of FPV for the great idea. I'm going to put the Insta360 on it for other shots. I think the Insta360 Go 2 gets great shots. Yeah, it's not 4K, it's only 2.7. But while color graded, the stabilization and the coloring you can do after the fact is phenomenal. But face it backwards for chase stuff. You can fire it up while you're in the canopy and get some really cool shots. And I'm going to make some mounts because there are light mounts out there. But while this thing is here, I'm going to make a little GoPro other bracket and then just a plate so we can put little flashlight type things on there, the V-Fly light or whatever. So while we fly at dusk, because these cameras are not that great, should have mentioned that, they're not that great on low light. If you set the settings right, it's cool and you can see, and it's kind of snowy, but you can also denoise a little bit. But with a light, I think it would help a lot. And if you want to just use this for great footage to see because it's HD, I could strap the Insta on here and then I could get footage from there. So I'm going to mess around with it. We all are. It'll be cool. We do a lot of chasing, especially Shane and I. Now Chet, because he's got his avata. But we like following each other through the forest, through the bando, and getting some really, really fun shots. And I got some cool edits of that coming out. But to be able to see the chase footage, because I'm usually middle to the back of the pack, so I can get all of them in the shots, or I don't get to see myself very often, but they'd be able to do that now, and you'd be able to see in forward and who's right behind me, because sometimes you get right on top of each other and really close. I think that would be fun and add to what we're doing. Anyway, that's mods, so there's lots of stuff to print for it. These are hard plastic. If you ever see these on Etsy, don't buy them. They come with a 3D printed bumper on here. Absolute joke. The quality that these came printed was an absolute shit joke. I got some money back on them, but I was just very, very disappointed. Not happy. And they don't take much abuse. This one I think is loose. One of these is loose. Anyway, I found one on Etsy that's actually soft. So when you bump them, it actually pushes in, which will be perfect. But I think they're in Germany. So I'm going to keep looking. Anyway. The flight characteristics. It flies like a typical drone. If you have not modified the controller and added M mode/acro. The stick starts in the center, especially if you come from a drone world where you'd be very used to flying it, where stick is center, you go up a little bit and it lifts it a little bit and it springs back. When I go down, but you lose a lot of fluidity coming from. I've flown Cinewhoops almost from the beginning and got phenomenal, in my opinion, with them, and being able to wiggle through some crazy shit, being able to go up, go down, and just the fluidity of the flight like a bird. You can't do that with this. Even if you dead stick it like mine is, and dead sticking means my throttle stick starts all the way at the bottom, and it has no spring tension because you have to have that to fly acro/manual mode. It's not hard to fly normal mode with it because you kind of start in center and your movements just are slow around that center. I can take my goggles off still and talk to somebody for a second because I can kind of get that right spot, so it's just kind of hovering or raising up and down a little bit, but you can see it and adjust. Not the end of the world, and I don't take my goggles off while flying very often anyway. But what ruins the fluidity for me, in my opinion, and I wish DJI would give the option of turning off, are these sensors. These sensors stop you. Let's say this is the gap from here to here and you come flying down. It's hard enough to get it to drop at a nice even level to come down and shoot through here. But if you come down too hard or you're too close to here and need to drop and push down too far, it tries to land. I've had some gaps I've tried to shoot over frozen ponds with logs and stuff, and it stops you here, and then when you try to lower down, then there's just no way to smoothly get underneath, and it's an absolute pain in the ass. Yes, you can do it in acro, but in my opinion, the slowness and the smoothness while slow, while in normal mode, is good. It's just the up and down that it just doesn't let you do it. So I wish DJI would add an option to turn off the sensors. So you can, because you can do it in every other drone, where you can turn off all the obstacle avoidance type things. Do that to this, so it would automatically, the throttle would act completely like acro. So you could drop right down at the same caliber and just keep going, but still have the flow that normal mode has. V-Fly. So it has a beeper. If it goes down gently and somebody's going to get it for you, our spotter, because we always do it in a manner where we have a spotter, but it's easy, especially if it falls through the ferns or something like that, that you can tap one of the buttons that you can set up and it beeps. You get motor beeping noise, and it's decent, not as loud as it should be, and especially depending on which way it's facing, it sounds different. And if you crash, and I found this out the first time, I was the first one, where if you fall hard enough, the battery that sits in there ends up all the way over there. Now you can't turtle, you can't do anything, you're shit out of luck. Our option, which works phenomenally well, and we thank the Ghost of FPV for that, because the searching for his was a pain in the ass. Right in there is super killer Gorilla Glued, the V-Fly beacon. I think it's like the version 3, it's the blue one. You can get them on Amazon faster and cheaper than actually through V-Fly. This doesn't need to be wired anywhere. You just charge it up, you turn it on. There's a couple settings for sensitivity. I leave it on the most sensitive. I reach in through here, inside there with a little screwdriver I carry with me, and turns it on, turns it off. After sitting idle for a little while, it starts to give you a little pre-warning, and then if nothing happens, let's just see, especially if you stop and bullshit and forget that it's on, it'll start yelling at you. But if you were to gently land in the woods because of battery dying, or you crashed, especially when it crashes, it starts beeping, and you can get right to it because you can hear it across the woods because it's super loud. If you are in a darker location when it goes down, which it is already in here for the most part, you get this bluish white pulse also. So if it was attached to your battery and you're in a darker area, or even at nighttime, whatever it is, it's going to help you find it. And low light conditions, when we go down into the woods, which we'll do again in the fall, that thing flashing will help you see it while it's flying and when it goes down. But I also have this. This is a multicolor. It can change, be solid, it can be one color only, but I put this on so it helps my spotter find it easier. Obviously you can hear it, but it makes it kind of cool when you're chasing to have colors, and I'd like to do LEDs all the way around this thing, but that's another conversation. As somebody that has flown a lot in the woods and done it with analog, with no assistance, sometimes you get caught in the moment. Even with your spotter, you get caught in the moment traveling those lines and going deeper and deeper and deeper into the woods or higher up into the trees, and at one moment you go, where am I? Thankfully your spotter can get you down and all those things, but it's a pain in the ass. One incredible feature that has stopped me from wanting to use other quads for the tree surfing is the fat H that you get inside your goggles because of GPS. If you are completely new to this, and this is the very first video you've ever seen in Avata, humor me. So again, being a GPS quad and being able to return to home and all those basic features, awesome features that you get with a drone, this, with the new setup, puts a little floating H in your screen based on where you are from where you took off. And where you set that home point is adjustable, which is awesome. So let's just say you started flying here, this is your little guy, and you're flying from here, but you don't like the vantage point. Take your goggles off for a minute and you go walk all the way over here. And you're flying from this end of the field because you like it better. You can bring the quad back, reset your home point, and then when you return to home, if you have to, it won't return to here. It'll return to here. Anyway, that little floating H always lets you know where home is. And it is a lifesaver sometimes. Epic. Absolutely epic. I think I've covered most of the things. I've kind of touched on some of the bad. And there's not a lot of it. It's honestly the flight characteristics. And if I'm to be a complete smartass, but be honest, one of the bad characteristics of the DJI Avata is that it makes me not want to fly any other Cinewhoop, any other quad that's this size. I had my favorite, right before I got this, I had finished rebuilding like the version 3 of Pickles, which was a 3-inch traditional semi-ducted prop guard-ish top. I don't even know, part of the frame is right there. Rebuilt it, had that thing flying, had the GoPro Bones 10 on it, and it was phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. And I was so used to analog. Cadex Baby Retellic, one of the best analog cameras you could get. I squeaked through some crazy stuff and was used to it. But after flying this, I kind of sat myself down and said, self, why in the F do you want to fly that? It doesn't have H, it doesn't have return to home. This is HD. I mean, the video quality that you get, the scraggle that you can see in this is next to nothing. This is the best. So I talked myself out of it, and it's just, Pickles is now completely gutted and going to be a parts thing. I got a stack and some motors that I need to get rid of, sell off or something like that. So as weird as that sounds, it's made me not want to fly. I'll still fly the tiny little whoops. I have a couple 85mm like Pearl here, and Pearl is analog, and I can still tree surf, but it's tree surfing in somebody's yard or my backyard or small places in the woods where I don't need to worry about getting lost and stuff like that. And there's just nostalgia with flying. I mean, this is a completely custom built crazy thing. Its life started off as a 65mm HD whoop with a split cam in it, and now it's back to real analog. And I just put the Insta on here, and it's got a nice low profile and can shoot some killer gaps and flies really good for a little 2S thing. I love it. Well, never steer away from that. But when it comes to exploring and big bandos and places where you want the penetration power of that digital system, again, there's another thing. I'm not afraid of fail-safing or losing it in a big bando or in a huge field somewhere, whatever, which could possibly happen with analog. You lose signal with here, you can set it up in your goggles to hover until you get it back or return to home. You don't want it to return to home when you're in a bando, just saying. But that's another pro for this thing, is that it has the ability, if you break signal, to save itself versus crashing. And again, in the heat of the moment, when you're flying somewhere and you're excited and you're doing really freaking crazy lines through trees or whatever it is, or a bando, and you fail safe, in that moment of panic, you almost forget where you were. because of the excitement while flying, and that's another pro for having a spotter, which I firmly believe in. So the features that this thing has are next to none. And I think that's kind of it. So, I mean, I dig it. I know it's not for a lot of people, but for somebody that's looking to do exploring, take it with you hiking and checking out areas that you want to see from a different vantage point, bandos especially, it's an absolute blast. Yes, you can freestyle it. I recommend putting it into not horizon lock, but whatever, the rock steady. It acts sort of weird if you do flips and rolls with the horizon lock. I think that's just the way that it's designed with the software. Not the end of the world. Again, I don't do some hardcore stuff usually with it anyway, but it's fun. Certain lines require a little more speed and different lines, and you can still do it. So if you want to learn acro with it, it's a good tool. Oh, that's another thing I can add to it. There's a pause button on it. So let's say you get a bug in your eye. And that happened to me yesterday. Mosquitoes are absolutely ridiculous this year. If you're flying and you're in the middle of some treacherous shit, yeah, you can let go of the sticks. And with dead stick, if you got it centered, you're good. But if you need to take your goggles off for more than a minute, there's a pause button on the side. And that applies to acro. So you could be in the middle of an upside down flip over a cliff and something doesn't feel right. You slap pause, it just kind of goes and then stops, locks into place, and you're golden. Lifesaver for people learning. On the acro aspect of it, I'd recommend learning on something like this. It's more robust, as in it's not going to break as easy. There are a lot of 85 to 110 millimeter quads out there that I think you can tune a little better in the acro aspect for your stick deflection. So when you want to flip and roll, how fast it'll actually do. So I think you get a little more out of that, and I think you would enjoy that more. But it will do it if you start off slow. It kills me when people are learning, they got to go as high as they can go and as far as they can go. You don't jump into a pool if you don't know how to swim and not expect to drown. If you're trying to learn anything, especially this, baby steps. When I learned acro in my yard with the Blade Torrent 110, I didn't fly more than 6 feet off the ground. I set up some pool noodles. I stabbed them into the ground on either end of the yard, and I practice in acro going both ways, building up muscle memory going both ways, and then figure eight. And just kept doing that day after day after day, every day that I came home from work to practice until I started getting that muscle memory where it made sense and I wasn't crashing. And then slowly building towards doing a flip and a roll. And then custom tuning it to what you want. This guy, yes, you can do it, but I mean, learning on this, the chances of smashing it and breaking it with a lot more expensive equipment, kind of not worth it. Where you can take the HD camera off, you can do it easily with analog. There's enough you can see because you're not in the scraggle, you're not in the woods, you're doing it in an open area or a yard, something like that. So that's my recommendation for learning acro. I hope I didn't miss anything. I hope you guys appreciate this. I hope my opinion has some validity value and you see where I'm coming from and why I like it. Again, I've gone kind of anti-drone for the longest time because I learned on them. I loved the shots I could get, but I got bored. Always was like, I wish I could see from the view. Yeah, my Blade, not Blade, the unique Q500 Plus I had, huge monster, was one of my first that my wife got me for a birthday in the beginning, way back, like 10 years ago, 9 years ago. Phenomenal. Big ass scary monster though. But it got great shots, and it had a screen on the controller. You're limited based on how bright it is and all that jazz. And you could see it, but there's nothing like wearing the goggles. Nothing. And now I can get those drone shots that I could get before, and I'm not bored because I'm in the goggles, and I can fly through those gaps and have an absolute blast. So this thing is my hero. I absolutely love flying it. And I hope they come out with a version 2, because obviously they'll create some tweaks and better some things, hopefully. So we'll see. But I highly recommend it. It's great for exploring. It's great for slow flow. It's decent for acro and some faster flying, but that's not its purpose. So if you're looking to get into exploring and making memories of your vacations or wherever the hell you go, it's absolutely worth it. I also recommend getting the FPV controller and not buying a bundle with that dildo looking controller. I think it's a novelty in many aspects. I think it's great if you want to say, hey, girlfriend, wifey, best friend that's never flown anything, try this, and then they don't have to put any real intuitive thought to it. You just kind of twist your wrist around, and I'm going to leave all the bad jokes out of that, but yeah, it'll get them in the air and have some fun. They don't have to think about it. But if you're serious about flying and want to fly the traditional way that we do with the controller, that's the way to go. Also, with the goggles, there's a couple options. I have the older, when they first came out with the FPV drone, they had the FPV goggles. The second version of those are the goggles version 2. That's what I have. Those are the best ones. I think the refresh rate's better. They fit my face way better. The newer ones out are I think they're called the Integra, or there's 2 versions of those, but they call those the goggles 2, which is confusing as shit. So version 2 and then goggles 2. They're skinnier. They don't fit most people's faces right. I think they're ugly as shit. And I believe the Integra also has that GPS stuff built in. So the remote ID conversation, which I'm going to leave out of this, is a pain in the ass. But I highly recommend the goggles version 2. You can get them at a decent price on eBay, everywhere. But I got a bunch of stuff I got to get finished. Got a lot going on this morning. That is my half-hour rant version of my year in having the Avata. Any questions, please share. If you have advice for me, please share. And all the blah, 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 share, comment, thumbs up, subscribe.